Have you ever felt the ground shifting beneath your feet? That subtle but persistent sense that the world is becoming more unpredictable, more fragile with each passing day. We scroll through headlines that speak of economic uncertainty, social division, environmental crises, a cascade of challenges that can leave even the most grounded among us feeling unmoored. Yet nearly 2,000 years ago, in an era of even greater upheaval and existential threat, a group of philosophers known as the Stoics developed a system of mental fortitude so profound that it allowed individuals not just to survive chaos, but to thrive within it. They understood something we've largely forgotten, that resilience isn't an accident of personality, but the product of deliberate daily practice. In his private journals, never meant for public eyes, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That power wasn't theoretical. It was built day by day through rituals designed to forge minds capable of withstanding collapse. This video is an invitation to explore those very rituals, the same practices that guided statesmen, soldiers, and slaves through some of history's most turbulent times. We're not merely discussing philosophy here, we're uncovering a practical toolkit for building unshakable inner stability, no matter what storms rage outside. From the morning meditation that sets a tone of intentionality to the evening review that turns experience into wisdom, each habit served as a brick in what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a fortress of character that remains standing long after external circumstances have crumbled. This isn't about suppressing emotion or pretending difficulty doesn't exist. It's about developing the clarity to see events as they are, not as we fear them to be, and the courage to respond with virtue rather than react with panic. By the end of our journey together, you'll have more than just historical insight, you'll have actionable steps to incorporate these timeless practices into your own life. Imagine starting your day not with anxiety but with grounded purpose. Imagine facing setbacks not as disasters, but as opportunities to practice strength. Imagine cultivating a calm so deep that it becomes your default setting, even in the midst of chaos. That is the promise of Stoicism, and it's within your reach. We'll walk through specific rituals supported by quotes from Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, and explore how you can adapt them for modern life. This is the art of building a mind that doesn't just endure, but emerges stronger. Let's begin. How do you typically start your mornings? Is it a frantic scramble, reaching for your phone to check notifications, emails, and the latest news, letting the outside world dictate your mental state before you've even gotten out of bed? Or do you begin with a moment of quiet intention, setting the tone for the day ahead rather than having it set for you? The Stoics argued that this initial choice is one of the most critical we make each day. They practiced a powerful ritual known as premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Now, that might sound pessimistic at first glance, but it's actually one of the most empowering and grounding exercises you can adopt. It's not about dwelling on the negative or expecting the worst to happen. It's about inoculation. Just as a vaccine introduces a small, weakened dose of a virus to build your body's immunity, this practice introduces a small, manageable dose of adversity to build your mind's resilience. By calmly and rationally visualizing potential challenges, a difficult conversation, a project setback, a traffic jam, you strip those future events of their emotional shock value. When you've already faced a situation in your mind and reaffirmed your ability to handle it with composure, the real thing loses its power to derail you. The philosopher Seneca beautifully articulated the purpose of this morning meditation in his letters. He wrote, The wise man will start each day with the thought, "Fortune gives us nothing which we can really own." He wasn't advocating for a life of grim pessimism, but for a profound and liberating clarity. By beginning the day with the conscious acknowledgement that everything external, our possessions, our status, even our relationships, is on loan from fate, we shift our focus to the one thing we truly own, our character and our choices. This morning practice is a declaration that your inner peace will not be held hostage by external events. It's about building a fire within you that no outside storm can extinguish. Implementing this doesn't require a huge time commitment. A simple 5-minute ritual can fundamentally alter your entire day. Find a quiet space before the world demands your attention. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Then ask yourself, what challenges might today present? Visualize 1 or 2 specific scenarios. Perhaps it's a demanding meeting where you might feel criticized. See it play out in your mind. Now, crucially, visualize yourself responding not with defensiveness or anger, but with calm, active listening and a reasoned response. See yourself handling it with grace, or perhaps you anticipate a task you've been procrastinating on. Visualize yourself sitting down and tackling it with focused determination, overcoming the initial resistance. This mental rehearsal primes your neural pathways, making that virtuous response more accessible when the moment actually arrives. It's a way of programming your default settings away from panic and toward principle. So as you move forward with your day, I want you to carry one question with you. What is the one single thing you could anticipate today? It doesn't have to be a major catastrophe. It could be something as simple as your commute taking longer than usual or a coworker being short with you. By choosing to anticipate it, you're not inviting it to happen. You are simply building a mental guardrail, ensuring that if it does, you won't be caught off guard. You'll be ready, not with a reactive emotion, but with a purposeful response. And just as the Stoics believed in beginning the day with intention, they placed equal importance on how it ended. How often do you pause to reflect on your actions and reactions at the close of a day? For most of us, the evening is a time to unwind, to distract ourselves with screens and entertainment until we fall asleep, effectively hitting the reset button without any thought to what we might learn from the last 24 hours. The Stoics saw this as a profound waste of wisdom. They practiced a ritual known as the evening review, a dedicated period of honest self-assessment designed to transform daily experience into lasting personal growth. This wasn't about self-punishment or dwelling on regrets. It was a systematic, compassionate audit of the day, a way to close the books with clarity and prepare for a better tomorrow. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of Stoicism's most influential teachers, was a strong advocate for this practice. He instructed his students, "For what can even the most violent person do to you if you praise him at the very moment he is striking you?" This might seem like an extreme example, but his point was about absolute self-mastery. The evening review is where you check in on that mastery. Epictetus urged a constant process of self-scrutiny, asking, "How did I respond to the unexpected? Where did my desires lead me astray? Was my anger justified, or did I assign value to something outside my control?" He believed that progress in philosophy wasn't measured by clever arguments read in a book, but by tangible improvements in character observed through daily life. The evening review was the tool for taking that measurement. Implementing this is beautifully simple and requires nothing more than a few minutes and a notebook. A powerful journaling prompt directly from Stoic principles involves asking yourself 2 fundamental questions at the end of each day. First, what events or outcomes today were outside of my control? This could be the weather, a rude comment from a stranger, a traffic delay, or your boss's bad mood. Acknowledging this helps you release any lingering frustration or anxiety attached to those events. They simply are. They are not a reflection of you. The second question is far more important. How did I choose to respond to those events? This is where your power lies. Did you respond with patience or impatience, with courage or fear, with kindness or resentment? Your responses, your judgments, and your actions are always within your control, and this question holds you lovingly accountable for them. So as you reflect on your own day, I encourage you to identify just one specific moment. It doesn't have to be a major event. Perhaps it was when your child was demanding attention while you were trying to finish a task. Did you respond with patience or did you snap? Maybe it was a small frustration, like spilling coffee on your shirt. Did you laugh it off as a trivial event, or did you let it sour your mood for an hour? Find that one moment and examine it without judgment. If you responded well, take a moment to acknowledge that small victory in aligning with virtue. If you could have done better, simply note the lesson. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness, and it's in that awareness that real, resilient character is built, one honest evening at a time. Stoics believed with unwavering conviction that our inner peace does not depend on the events that happen to us, but entirely on our judgments about those events. This is the very bedrock of cognitive detachment, and it represents a monumental shift in how we experience the world. Most of us operate under the assumption that external circumstances directly cause our emotional states, that a traffic jam makes us angry, or a critical comment makes us feel hurt. Stoicism challenges this entire framework. It introduces a crucial, liberating pause between what happens and how we feel. The event itself is neutral. It is the story we tell ourselves about the event, the value we assign to it, that generates the emotional turbulence. A cancelled flight is in objective reality, a change in the location of an aircraft. It only becomes a disaster because we attach a judgment to it. This ruins my vacation. The airline is incompetent. I'm going to miss an important meeting. The suffering comes from the narrative, not the neutral fact. Marcus Aurelius dedicated much of his private writing to mastering this internal filter. He offered himself a powerful reminder: take away your opinion, and then there is taken away the complaint, I have been harmed. Take away the complaint, I have been harmed, and the harm is taken away. This is the essence of the practice. It's not about pretending the event didn't happen. It's about surgically removing the added layer of catastrophic judgment that amplifies the event's impact. He wasn't suggesting we become emotionally numb robots. Instead, he was advocating for a more accurate and less painful engagement with reality. By recognizing that the event itself is beyond our control, but our opinion of it is not, we reclaim our sovereignty. The goal is to see the world as it is, not worse than it is. Consider a practical, everyday application. You're driving to an appointment and suddenly find yourself in standstill traffic. The immediate, automatic judgment might be, this is terrible, I'm going to be late, this always happens to me, now my whole day is ruined. This narrative instantly triggers stress hormones, frustration, and perhaps even anger at other drivers. Now apply cognitive detachment. The objective event is, cars are not moving. That is a neutral fact. The judgment that it is terrible is an optional add-on that you have the power to discard. By consciously reframing it, you might say, this is a delay. It is outside my control. I can use this time to listen to an audiobook I enjoy or simply have a few minutes of quiet reflection. The circumstance hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has transformed entirely. The same principle applies to criticism. The words spoken are just vibrations in the air. The sting comes from our interpretation. They think I'm incompetent, or this means I've failed. detaching allows you to see the criticism as mere data. You can then choose to evaluate it objectively. Is there useful feedback here? Or dismiss it as irrelevant without the accompanying emotional wound. Think back to a minor annoyance you experienced recently. Perhaps a colleague was short with you, or you misplaced your keys, or a delivery was delayed. Now replay that moment in your mind and identify the automatic judgment you placed on it. What was the story you told yourself that caused the frustration? Now try to strip that event down to its bare, neutral facts. My colleague used a terse tone. My keys are not in their usual location. The package did not arrive at the expected time. By separating the pure event from your opinion about it, you create a small space of freedom. In that space lies the potential to choose a calmer, more constructive response, one that leaves your peace of mind intact. Consider for a moment the sheer volume of suffering in our lives that stems not from actual events, but from a single, relentless source, the habit of wanting things that are ultimately outside our command. We desire a specific promotion, the unwavering approval of our peers, a particular outcome in a relationship, or even something as simple as sunny weather for a weekend picnic. Each of these desires, when placed in the hands of fortune, becomes a potential hook for disappointment, anxiety, and frustration. The Stoics identified this as a fundamental error in our approach to happiness. They didn't suggest we abandon desire altogether. That would be inhuman. Instead, they proposed a radical retraining of our wants, a discipline of desire that redirects our deepest yearnings away from fickle external outcomes and toward the one thing we can truly command, our own character and intentions. This shift is not about suppressing ambition. It's about channeling it into a domain where we are the sole authorities, where failure is impossible as long as we act with virtue. Epictetus, who began his life in chains, understood the true nature of freedom better than most. He framed this entire practice with breathtaking clarity. Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it. At first read, this sounds almost nihilistic, but he isn't talking about the desire to be a good person or to act with courage. He is specifically targeting those corrosive desires for externals, the yearning for wealth, status, or the behavior of others. His instruction was to align our wants with nature and reason, to desire only what is truly good: wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control, and to be indifferent to the rest. When your deepest desire is to act with integrity, no one can stop you. When your primary goal is to respond to situations with wisdom, you cannot be thwarted by a change in circumstances. This realignment is the ultimate liberation from the tyranny of chance. We can see this play out in a common modern scenario. Imagine you've worked tirelessly on a major project at work. You've poured your energy into it, done what you believe is exceptional work, and now the day of the presentation to senior leadership has arrived. The natural, untrained desire is for a specific outcome: their praise, their recognition, perhaps even a bonus or promotion. This desire places your emotional well-being and sense of self-worth entirely in their hands. What if they are distracted? What if they don't fully understand your contribution? What if the company's priorities have suddenly shifted? The Stoic approach involves a subtle but profound pivot. Before the meeting, you consciously redirect your desire. Your primary goal is no longer their praise. That is outside your control. Your deepest desire becomes to present your work with clarity, honesty, and professionalism. You want to answer questions patiently and to represent your team's effort well. These are internal goods entirely within your power to achieve. When you walk into that room with this realigned desire, you carry an unshakable calm. You have already achieved your goal by preparing thoroughly and resolving to act with virtue. their reaction becomes mere data, pleasant if it's positive, but irrelevant to your core success. This week, bring this discipline into your own life by identifying one specific desire that is quietly draining your energy because its fulfillment depends on others or on mere chance. Perhaps it's the desire for a friend to always agree with you, for your children to behave perfectly in public, or for a particular investment to yield a high return. Acknowledge the desire without judgment, and then consciously choose to release your attachment to that specific external outcome. In its place, install a new, virtuous desire that is entirely within your jurisdiction. Instead of wanting your children to behave perfectly, desire to respond to their actions with patience and loving guidance. Instead of craving a financial windfall, focus on the desire to manage your resources with wisdom and prudence today. This is not a passive resignation. It is an active, powerful choice to place your wants where you have absolute authority, building a foundation for contentment that no external event can ever shake. What if the very act of occasionally choosing discomfort could fundamentally rewire your relationship with fear and scarcity, making you not just stronger, but truly unconquerable from within? This is not a call to seek out misery, but a strategic exercise in reclaiming your autonomy. The Stoics engaged in a powerful practice known as voluntary discomfort, a deliberate and temporary embrace of minor hardships like cold, hunger, or simplicity. Their goal was never self-punishment. It was a profound form of psychological inoculation. By willingly experiencing a small dose of what they feared, whether it was poverty, discomfort, or social obscurity, they proved to themselves that they could not only survive it but also retain their core character and peace of mind throughout the experience. It was a living reminder that their true strength was internal, a resource that no external circumstance could ever plunder. This practice systematically dismantles the power that the fear of loss holds over us, transforming the unknown into the familiar and the dreaded into the manageable. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, was a staunch advocate for this ritual. He didn't just preach it from a place of theory, he lived it. He advised, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? His question cuts to the very heart of the practice. We build monsters in our minds, imagining that losing our comforts would be an unbearable catastrophe. Seneca's method invites us to directly confront that imagined monster, to stare it in the face and discover that it is in fact a paper tiger. By periodically practicing poverty, he wasn't preparing to be poor. He was preparing his mind to be immune to the anxiety of potentially becoming poor. This practice cultivates a deep and unshakable gratitude for what we have, not by ignoring our blessings, but by understanding their true, non-essential nature. We stop taking warm water and a full refrigerator for granted because we have recently, and by our own choice, remembered what it feels like to be without them. Integrating this into a modern life of relative abundance is both simple and incredibly potent. The key is to start small and intentional. You might begin by taking a cold shower for the final 30 seconds of your morning routine. That initial shock of cold is a direct physical conversation with your own comfort-seeking instincts. For a moment, every fiber of your being screams to turn it back to warm, but you consciously choose not to. In that tiny victory of mind over body, you build a little more resilience. Another powerful practice is to skip a single meal, not as a diet, but as a deliberate exercise in understanding that hunger is a temporary sensation, not an emergency. You learn that you can function, think, and even be productive while hungry, dismantling the belief that constant satiation is a requirement for well-being. Perhaps the most relevant modern application is a voluntary digital fast. Choose to leave your phone at home for an afternoon, or commit to a full 24 hours without social media or streaming services. This creates a space of silence and simplicity, forcing you to confront the minor anxiety of being disconnected and discovering the peace that lies on the other side of that initial discomfort. This week, make a conscious pact with yourself to experiment with one small act of voluntary discomfort. It doesn't need to be grand or extreme. Choose one thing: that cold shower, a walk in slightly unpleasant weather without complaining, a meal of simple bread and water instead of your usual snack, or a designated evening without any screens. As you do it, pay close attention not just to the physical sensation, but to the mental chatter that arises. Observe the urge to quit, and then observe the strength you summon to continue. When you complete it, sit for a moment in the feeling of accomplishment, and notice how your perspective on your ordinary comforts has subtly shifted. This is not about building a tolerance for misery. It is about building an unassailable confidence in your own capacity to endure, a confidence that will quietly underpin your actions long after the discomfort has passed. We've all been there. You're running late, the pressure is mounting, and then someone says the one wrong thing that just snaps the last thread of your patience. In an instant, a sharp, regrettable word flies out of your mouth. The moment it's said, you feel that sinking feeling of regret, knowing you've escalated a situation rather than improved it. That split-second lapse, that surrender to raw emotion over reasoned action, is exactly what the Stoics dedicated themselves to mastering. They recognized that between any external event, the stimulus, and our behavior, the response, there exists a crucial space. For most of us, that space is infinitesimally small, collapsing instantly under the weight of habit and emotion. But for the practiced Stoic, that gap is a wide open field of freedom. It is in that pause that we find the power to choose wisdom over impulse, to select a response aligned with our deepest values rather than our most superficial reactions. Marcus Aurelius, who faced immense political pressure and constant threats to his authority, constantly reminded himself of this power. He wrote in his private meditations, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." At its core, this isn't about revenge at all. It's about reclaiming your agency. When someone acts poorly, the natural, untrained reaction is to mirror their behavior, to meet anger with anger, insult with insult. Aurelius is pointing to a higher path. The true victory lies in refusing to be pulled down to their level. It's in that pause that you can choose patience over pettiness, rational action over emotional reaction. He is arguing that your calm, virtuous response in the face of provocation is not a sign of weakness, but the ultimate demonstration of strength. It proves that your inner state is governed by you, not by the actions of anyone else. So how do we practically widen that gap between stimulus and response in our own lives? It begins with creating a simple, interruptible habit. The next time you feel that familiar heat of anger rising in your chest, or the cold grip of anxiety taking hold, your first and only job is to pause and take one deep, intentional breath. This isn't just a cliché, it's a physiological circuit breaker. It forces a moment of delay, however brief, and oxygenates your brain, allowing the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, to come back online. In that reclaimed space, ask yourself one powerful question. What would a wise person do? Don't ask what you want to do in that moment. That's usually the reactive impulse. Instead, invoke the mental model of a person you deeply respect for their composure and integrity. It might be a historical figure like Marcus Aurelius, a mentor, or even a fictional character. By asking what they would do, you create a tiny bit of psychological distance from your own emotions, allowing you to choose a response from a place of virtue rather than vanity. Take a moment now to look inward. Can you identify a specific trigger that consistently pulls you into a reactive pattern? Perhaps it's a particular tone of voice your partner uses, a certain type of criticism from your boss, or the chaos of a hectic morning with your children. Pinpoint that trigger. Now, before you encounter it again, do a mental rehearsal. Decide in advance what your mindful, virtue-guided response will be. If the trigger is your partner's tone, your planned response might be to take that breath and say, "It feels like we're both getting frustrated. Can we take 5 minutes and come back to this?" If it's a critical comment, your response could be, "Thank you for that feedback. I'd like to think about it and discuss it further." By planning this not in the heat of the moment but in a state of calm, you are pre-programming that gap with wisdom. You are building a new default setting, one that leads not to regret but to respect for yourself and for others, who embodies wisdom and calm in your own mind. It might be a historical figure like Abraham Lincoln, known for his steady leadership during unimaginable national division. It could be a personal mentor, a grandparent whose quiet strength you've always admired, or even a fictional character like Atticus Finch, who upholds his principles against a tidal wave of prejudice. The Stoics recognized the immense power of having such a mental model, and they formalized this into a practice known as the Contemplation of the Sage. This isn't about putting someone on a pedestal or engaging in wishful thinking. It is an active, dynamic thought experiment designed to bridge the gap between our current reactions and our highest potential. When faced with a confusing, frustrating, or ethically murky situation, the Stoics would pause and ask a simple but transformative question: what would a perfectly rational and virtuous person do here? By personifying wisdom in this way, they created a practical compass for navigating life's gray areas, one that always points toward character over convenience. Epictetus, who understood adversity intimately, directly encouraged his students to use this technique as a daily guide. He advised them to have the words and actions of such an exemplary figure constantly at hand, both for your own strength and for the sake of those around you. His instruction was to emulate those we see handling adversity with grace, not to copy them blindly, but to understand the principles behind their actions and make them our own. He wasn't suggesting we find one perfect human being. He knew that didn't exist. Instead, he was urging us to construct an ideal composite, a personal archetype of wisdom that we can consult in moments of uncertainty. This sage becomes our internal counsel, a voice of reason that rises above the noise of our immediate fears and desires, reminding us of the person we are striving to become. Imagine you are about to walk into a difficult conversation, perhaps a negotiation where the other party is known for being aggressive and manipulative. Your natural, untrained instinct might be to armor up, to prepare your own counter-arguments and threats, to meet their anticipated energy with your own. Now apply the contemplation of the sage. Before you enter the room, you take a quiet moment. You bring to mind your chosen model of wisdom. How would they prepare? They would likely enter with calm confidence, not arrogance. They would listen first, seeking to understand the underlying interests rather than just reacting to the surface-level demands. They would speak clearly and firmly, but without hostility, because their goal isn't to win a petty battle but to find a sustainable solution. They would retain their dignity regardless of the outcome. By mentally walking through the interaction from this perspective, you are no longer entering alone. You are bringing the best of your mentors with you, and you are far more likely to choose a response that leaves you with no regrets. Now bring this practice to a challenge you are currently facing. It doesn't have to be a major life crisis. It could be a recurring minor irritation, a persistent procrastination, or a subtle ethical choice at work. Close your eyes for just a moment and clearly picture your personal sage. See their calm demeanor, hear their measured tone of voice. Now present your specific challenge to them. What is the first question they would ask you to clarify the real issue? What principle would they remind you is most important in this situation? Would they counsel immediate action, or would they suggest patience and further reflection? The answer you arrive at by channeling this wisdom will almost certainly be more measured, more virtuous, and more effective than your first impulsive thought. This practice transforms philosophy from an abstract concept into a living counsel, always available, always guiding you toward your better self. Think about all the mental and emotional energy you expend railing against circumstances you are utterly powerless to alter. We exhaust ourselves trying to hold back the tide, to freeze time, to force reality to conform to our personal preferences. The Stoics observed this fundamental human struggle and offered a radical alternative, not passive resignation, but active, clear-eyed acceptance. They saw the universe not as a static entity, but as a dynamic, ever-flowing process. Everything is in a state of constant transformation. The seasons shift, empires rise and fall, our bodies age, relationships evolve, careers take unexpected turns. To fight this inherent flux is like trying to stop the wind from blowing. It is a battle we are guaranteed to lose, and the only casualty is our own peace of mind. The suffering we experience is rarely from the change itself, but from our white-knuckled resistance to it, our desperate and futile attempt to make permanent that which is inherently temporary. Marcus Aurelius, from the front lines of war and the pressures of leadership, constantly meditated on this truth to ground himself. He wrote, "Think of the universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you, and of that which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it you are." He often used the beautiful, powerful metaphor of a flowing river to illustrate the nature of existence. He reminded himself that we cannot step into the same river twice, for new waters are always flowing on. The person you were yesterday is already gone, and the situation you are in today will be different tomorrow. His insight was that by aligning our will with the natural, inevitable flow of this river, by accepting its current rather than struggling against it, we find a profound and lasting equanimity. We stop wasting energy on the impossible and start focusing it on the only thing that matters, how we navigate the waters we are in. This philosophy becomes a practical lifeline during some of life's most challenging transitions. Consider the sudden loss of a job, an event that can feel like a personal failure and a threat to one's entire identity. The untrained mind might spiral into panic, self-recrimination, and fear about the future. The Stoic approach involves a conscious pivot of perspective. First, you acknowledge the reality: the job is gone. This is a fact. Fighting this fact by obsessing over the unfairness of it, or wishing it weren't so, only deepens the anguish. Acceptance means looking clearly at this new, unchosen reality and asking, given that this has happened, what are my virtues? What actions can I take from here? It transforms the event from a catastrophic endpoint into a difficult but neutral starting point for a new chapter. The same applies to the end of a relationship or the natural process of aging. Clinging to the way things were only poisons the way things are. Accepting that a relationship has run its course allows you to grieve with grace and eventually open yourself to new connections. Accepting the lines on your face and the changes in your body, not as insults but as a map of a life fully lived, liberates you from a futile war against time itself. Now bring this concept down from the philosophical level and into your own life. I want you to pause and identify one change, large or small, that you have been consciously or unconsciously resisting. Maybe it's a restructuring at work that dismantles your familiar routine. Perhaps it's your children growing more independent and needing you less. It could be as simple as a change in the weather that forces you to cancel outdoor plans. Hold that specific resistance in your mind. Feel the tension it creates. Now, experiment with a thought exercise of pure acceptance. Say to yourself, this change is happening. It is a part of the natural flow of life. My resistance is not stopping it, it is only hurting me. Explore what it might feel like to release that grip, to stop pulling on the rope in a tug of war you cannot win. Imagine the mental energy that would be freed up if you are no longer using it to fight this reality. That energy could then be redirected toward adaptable, creative, and virtuous action within your new circumstances. Acceptance isn't about approval, it's about reclaiming your power from a battle that was never yours to win, so you can deploy it where it actually matters. The only time we ever truly have is this moment. It's a simple truth, yet we spend the vast majority of our mental lives anywhere but here, replaying a harsh comment from yesterday, anxiously rehearsing a meeting scheduled for next week, or crafting elaborate scenarios about a future that may never come to pass. The Stoics identified this mental time travel as a primary source of human suffering. They weren't advocating for a life without planning or reflection. They were warning against the constant, draining habit of abandoning the present moment, which is the only reality where we can actually think, feel, and act. By cultivating a fierce, gentle presence, they sought to escape the twin traps of regret, which chains us to the past, and anxiety, which mortgages our current peace for a future we cannot control. This practice is about reclaiming your attention, the most precious resource you have, and investing it fully in the reality directly in front of you. Seneca, with his piercing insight into the human condition, articulated this waste with stunning clarity. He wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there would be no end of them." He observed that we are incredibly frugal with our money and property, yet wildly extravagant with our time, the one truly non-renewable resource. He argued that we are tormented by an illusion. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. His phrase, "live immediately," is the core of the Stoic call to presence. He wasn't saying to be impulsive or reckless. He was urging us to stop postponing our lives, to stop borrowing trouble from the future by worrying about events that exist only in our imagination. When you are mentally trapped in tomorrow's problems, you are not living your life today. You are missing it entirely, and that is a loss you can never recover. Turning this philosophy into daily practice can begin with a remarkably simple grounding exercise designed to anchor you firmly in the reality of the here and now. The next time you feel your mind spiraling into worry about a future event or ruminating on a past mistake, pause, take a single, slow breath, then deliberately note 3 sensory details in your immediate environment. Don't just see them, engage with them fully. Say to yourself, "I see the soft, warm light from this lamp. I feel the solid, supportive weight of the chair beneath me. I hear the distant hum of the refrigerator." This isn't a diversion or a distraction. It is a powerful recalibration. It forces your brain out of its abstract, narrative-driven mode and into direct sensory experience. It reminds your nervous system that in this exact moment you are safe, you are housed, you are breathing. The problem you are worrying about is not happening right now. This small act of noticing is a radical declaration that you are choosing to inhabit your own life in real time, rather than watching it pass by from a distance of regret or fear. Make a quiet commitment to yourself for the rest of the day. Whenever you catch your mind drifting away from the present, perhaps while waiting in line, driving, or sitting at your desk, gently guide it back. There's no need for frustration or self-criticism. The act of noticing the drift is itself a victory. The moment you realize you're worrying about tomorrow, simply acknowledge the thought without judgment, and then, like gently steering a boat back to its course, return your focus to your breath, to the task immediately at hand, or to the sensory world around you. This gentle return is the heart of the practice. It's not about building a fortress of concentration that never wavers. It's about developing the kindness and skill to come back, again and again, to the only place where your life is actually happening. What if the most direct path to profound gratitude wasn't through gaining more, but through the courageous act of mentally letting go of what you already have? This is the counterintuitive heart of the Stoic practice known as negative visualization, a powerful exercise that systematically dismantles our tendency to take our greatest blessings for granted. We operate on a default setting of assumed permanence. We assume our health will hold, our loved ones will always be there, our job will remain secure. This assumption is the bedrock of complacency, and it blinds us to the miraculous, fragile nature of our everyday reality. The Stoics sought to shatter this illusion not to cultivate fear, but to ignite a fierce and present appreciation. By periodically and vividly imagining the loss of the people, possessions, and positions we hold dear, we perform a kind of emotional alchemy. We transform the abstract knowledge of life's impermanence into a visceral, heartfelt experience of gratitude that resonates in our very bones. Seneca, the great Roman statesman and philosopher, was a master of this technique. He advised in his letters, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." While this speaks most directly to the ultimate loss, the principle applies to all things. He practiced what he called rehearsing misfortune, not as a morbid obsession, but as a strategic preparation of the mind. He would deliberately set aside time to contemplate the loss of his wealth, his status, even his own life. His purpose was never to invite these events, but to rob them of their power to shock and devastate him should they ever occur. He wrote, "We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality instead of only the usual course of events." By doing so, he discovered a remarkable side effect. When he mentally walked through the experience of losing his fortune, he would return to the present moment overwhelmed not by fear, but by a deep and sincere thankfulness for the comforts he currently enjoyed. The rehearsal of loss became the greatest possible trigger for appreciating presence. You can integrate this practice into your own life with a simple yet profound 5-minute exercise. Find a quiet space and bring to mind something or someone you deeply value, perhaps your partner, your child, your health, or your home. Now, close your eyes and give yourself permission to engage in a mental thought experiment. Imagine in vivid detail that this person or thing is gone. If it's a person, visualize your life without their laughter, their advice, their daily presence. Feel the emptiness of their absence. If it's your health, imagine the struggle of a body that no longer functions as it does now, the limitations that would be imposed. Sit with that feeling of loss for a full minute. Don't shy away from the discomfort. Then open your eyes. Let the reality of your current circumstances flood back in. Notice the immediate, powerful wave of relief and gratitude that washes over you. That person is still here. Your body is still strong. Your home is still safe. This emotional contrast is the entire point of the exercise. It forcibly recalibrates your appreciation from a theoretical understanding to a felt, emotional truth. Right now, I want you to choose one specific blessing in your life that you typically take for granted. It might be something as fundamental as your eyesight, allowing you to see the world in color and detail. It could be the consistent comfort of a warm bed to sleep in each night, or the reliable presence of a close friend you speak to regularly. Take just 60 seconds to practice negative visualization on this one thing. Mentally walk through a day without it. Imagine the frustration, the inconvenience, the genuine sadness of its absence. Then release that thought and return to the present. How does the presence of that same blessing feel now? Has its value been magnified? This shift in perspective isn't about living in fear of loss. It's about choosing to live in active, joyful appreciation of what is, precisely because we acknowledge it might not always be. It is the ultimate antidote to taking our lives for granted. Imagine a fortress not built of stone on some distant hill, but constructed deep within your own mind. A stronghold of character so resilient that no external storm, no criticism, no failure, and no flattery can ever breach its walls. This is the powerful Stoic metaphor of the inner citadel, a psychological sanctuary where your true self resides, unshaken by the chaos of the outside world. The Stoics understood that while we cannot control the events that happen to us, we have absolute sovereignty over the fortress of our own values, judgments, and principles. Cultivating this inner citadel isn't about building walls to hide from life. It's about creating an unassailable center of gravity from which you can engage with life fully, boldly, and virtuously without ever being thrown off balance. It is the ultimate act of declaring that your worth and your peace are not up for external negotiation. Marcus Aurelius, who faced endless political intrigue, the burdens of empire, and the grief of losing children, constantly turned inward to this very sanctuary. He wrote in his private meditations, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. There is nowhere that a person can find a more peaceful and trouble-free retreat than in his own mind." So constantly give yourself this retreat and renew yourself. His advice was to stop seeking peace in changing your location and to start building it by fortifying your inner world. He wasn't suggesting a retreat from responsibility, but a retreat into your core principles so that you could then go back out into the world and fulfill your duties with unwavering clarity. The inner citadel is this renewable source of strength, a place you can return to at any moment to remember who you are and what you stand for, regardless of the applause or hostility coming from outside the gates. We can see this principle in action through a modern example. Imagine a dedicated teacher who works in an underfunded school district. She pours her heart into her lesson plans and her students, yet she faces constant criticism from disengaged parents, receives little support from an overwhelmed administration, and sees her efforts seemingly make little difference in standardized test scores. The external validation, the praise, the high scores, the parental gratitude is sporadic at best. Without an inner citadel, this relentless pressure could easily lead to burnout, cynicism, and a loss of passion. But if she has taken the time to consciously build that fortress, her core purpose remains untouched. Her inner citadel is built on the non-negotiable values of compassion, patience, and the belief in every child's potential. When a parent is unfairly critical, she can hear the feedback without letting it shatter her self-worth because her identity is not tied to their opinion. When test scores are low, she feels the disappointment, but it doesn't destroy her purpose. Instead, it fuels her resolve to find new ways to teach. Her dignity and her sense of purpose are internally generated, making her resilient, adaptable, and ultimately far more effective. Now, I want you to turn this concept inward. Take a quiet moment to truly consider this question. What are the foundational principles of your own inner citadel? If everything external, your job title, your social status, your possessions, even the opinions of your closest friends, were suddenly stripped away, what core values would remain as the unshakable pillars of your identity? Perhaps for you, it's an unwavering commitment to honesty, where you choose to speak the truth even when it's inconvenient or unpopular. Maybe it's a profound sense of compassion, a deep-seated drive to alleviate suffering wherever you encounter it. It could be courage, the resolve to act according to your conscience despite your fear, or it might be a fierce dedication to fairness and justice. There is no single right answer, as each person's citadel is uniquely their own. The critical work lies in consciously identifying these pillars, because you cannot retreat to a fortress whose blueprint you have never seen. By defining what is truly non-negotiable, you begin the lifelong, empowering process of construction, ensuring that no matter what storms life brings, your inner peace has a place to stand. Notice how quickly a major success can send our ego soaring, making us feel invincible and just a little bit better than everyone else. And then observe how a single failure can send that same ego crashing down, leaving us feeling utterly defeated and worthless. This emotional roller coaster, where our sense of self is tossed about by external results, is exactly what the Stoics sought to dismantle. They aimed for a state of profound equilibrium they called apatheia, not the modern idea of apathy, but a state of being undisturbed by the passions, a calm clarity where your self-worth remains constant, anchored not in outcomes but in the quality of your effort and your character. This isn't about suppressing joy or ignoring disappointment. It's about recognizing that both triumph and setback are merely events that happen to you, not definitions of you. The true measure of a person is not found in their victories or their defeats, but in the consistent dignity and virtue they display while experiencing both. The Stoic goal was to treat both success and failure as what they called adiaphora, things indifferent. This doesn't mean they didn't prefer to succeed or that they were careless in their endeavors. It means they understood that the outcome itself is never inherently good or bad. What matters, the only thing that is truly good, is virtue, acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. A success achieved through deceit or luck is not a good thing for a Stoic, just as a failure met with courage and integrity is not a bad thing. The outcome is simply the raw material, the opportunity to practice virtue. A promotion is an opportunity to practice humility and leadership, not arrogance. A project failure is an opportunity to practice resilience and honest analysis, not self-pity. By shifting the locus of good and evil from the external result to the internal action, the Stoics built a psychological foundation that could not be shaken by the fickleness of fortune. Epictetus, who knew the depths of powerlessness and the heights of philosophical influence, offered perhaps the clearest guidance on this practice. He taught his students, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have lost your strategic position in life. He went even further, advising, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. This is the ultimate exercise in deflating the power of external judgment. Epictetus isn't suggesting we become self-deprecating. He is teaching us to be utterly indifferent to both praise and blame that comes from outside ourselves. When you are elated by approval, you hand control of your emotions to the person giving it. When you are dejected by disapproval, you do the same. Your strategic position, your inner citadel, must remain neutral territory, where your self-assessment is based solely on whether you acted in accordance with your principles, regardless of the cheers or the boos from the crowd. We can see the immense value of this equanimity play out in countless arenas of modern life. Consider a professional athlete who has just won a championship. The natural, untrained reaction is a massive surge of ego, a belief that they are now on top of the world. But this inflation makes the inevitable losses, injuries, or career declines that much more devastating. The athlete who practices Stoic equanimity will certainly feel the natural joy of victory, but they will consciously temper it. They might reflect that their win was the result of countless factors: teammates, coaches, a lucky bounce, and the efforts of their opponents. They understand that the championship trophy is an external, and that their true worth was already proven in the daily discipline of training, the courage to compete, and the respect they showed for the game. This mindset prevents the arrogance that can alienate others and ensures they are mentally prepared for the next challenge, rather than resting on a fragile laurel. The same principle applies to a crushing professional setback. Imagine a talented employee is unexpectedly laid off due to a corporate restructuring. The untrained mind might spiral into shame, believing the layoff is a personal indictment of their worth. The Stoic response is to separate the event from their character. They would acknowledge the disappointment while firmly noting, "This was a business decision outside my control. It does not define my skills or my value. My virtue lies in how I respond now, in updating my resume with integrity, in networking without desperation, and in treating this not as a catastrophe, but as a redirection." I want you to bring this concept into your own life with a moment of honest reflection. Think back over the last week or month and identify one clear win and one clear loss. The win could be landing a new client, receiving a compliment, finishing a project, or even winning a casual game. The loss could be a minor rejection, a forgotten task, a disagreement you feel you didn't handle well, or a goal you didn't meet. Now assess your emotional equilibrium. When you experienced that win, how did you feel? Did your confidence swell in a healthy way, or did a sense of superiority creep in? Did you feel the need to tell everyone about it, seeking their validation to cement the feeling? And with the loss, what was the internal narrative? Did you brush it off as a single event, or did you generalize it into a story about your own inadequacy? This isn't an exercise in self-criticism. It's an audit of your emotional anchors. By seeing where your self-worth was tethered, to the external event or to your internal effort, you gain the awareness needed to start retying those knots to the steady mast of your own character, ensuring that no matter how high the waves of fortune rise or fall, you remain upright and on course. It's no coincidence that some of the most resilient minds in history were also dedicated writers. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, they all engaged in a form of daily writing, using the written word not for publication or praise, but as a private tool to sharpen their thinking and fortify their character. In an age without digital distractions, this practice of journaling was their primary method of processing the complexities of life, reinforcing philosophical teachings, and holding themselves accountable to their highest ideals. This ancient habit remains just as potent today, not as a dusty academic exercise, but as a living conversation with yourself. It's a space where chaotic thoughts can be untangled, where fleeting insights can be captured and examined, and where the gap between the person you are and the person you aspire to be can be steadily narrowed. In the silence of that dialogue, clarity emerges. The power of Stoic journaling lies in its function as a form of self-dialogue. We are constantly narrating our lives internally, but these streams of thought are often reactive, emotional, and disjointed. The simple act of writing them down forces a slowing down and a structuring of this internal monologue. It externalizes your thoughts, allowing you to look at them objectively, as if they were presented by another person. You can then question them, challenge them, and refine them. Is this thought true? Is this judgment helpful? Is this desire aligned with my values? Journaling becomes a courtroom for your mind, where you act as both the witness presenting the evidence of your day and the judge evaluating it against the laws of your own reason. It's how you catch those subtle errors in judgment, the moments you catastrophized a minor setback or attributed malice where there was only haste, and correct them for the future. The most famous example of this practice is, of course, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. It's crucial to remember that this profound work, which has guided millions, was never intended for an audience. It was his personal journal, written during military campaigns, filled with reminders, reprimands, and exhortations meant for his eyes only. He wrote not to impress, but to instruct himself. He would often begin passages with direct commands like "remember" or "stop doing." This raw, unvarnished self-address is the true spirit of Stoic journaling. It's not about crafting beautiful prose, it's about conducting honest maintenance on your soul. He wasn't writing to create a masterpiece, he was writing to create a master of himself, using the page as his workshop. To start your own practice, you don't need a leather-bound book or hours of free time. The key is consistency and intention. Begin with just a few minutes each evening, using simple prompts to guide your reflection. Instead of a generic "what happened today," ask more targeted, Stoic-aligned questions. You might ask, "What did I learn today about myself or the world?" This shifts focus from events to wisdom gained. Another powerful prompt is, "Where did I act with courage or where did I avoid it?" This isn't about self-criticism, but about recognizing opportunities to practice virtue and noting where you can improve. You could also try, "What unnecessary desire or aversion disturbed my peace today?" This helps you identify the external things you mistakenly assigned too much importance to, allowing you to release them tomorrow. The goal is to move beyond mere diary entries into targeted self-examination that actively builds resilience. I encourage you to make a simple pact with yourself for the next 72 hours. Before you go to sleep, take 5 minutes with a notebook or even a notes app on your phone. Pick one of these prompts and write a few honest sentences. There's no need to write a novel. The power is in the act of distillation. After just 3 days, pause and look back over what you've written. Do you notice any patterns in your frustrations or your joys? Has the practice of writing down your judgments made you more aware of them in the moment? Even this tiny investment can act as a mirror, revealing the contours of your inner world with a new and startling clarity, turning the page into a map for your own continued growth. The Stoics offered a radical and empowering reframing of life's inevitable difficulties with a simple, profound phrase: "The obstacle is the way." This isn't a motivational platitude, it's a fundamental reorientation of perspective. It declares that the impediment, the setback, the frustrating delay, the very thing standing in your path, is not a barrier to be cursed, but the path itself. It is the raw material through which your character is forged and your strength is proven. Where the untrained mind sees a roadblock, the Stoic sees a training ground. Every challenge, from a minor inconvenience to a life-altering crisis, presents a hidden curriculum designed to teach us specific virtues we might otherwise neglect. A difficult person in our lives becomes a chance to practice patience and understanding. A financial setback becomes a masterclass in creativity and frugality. A professional failure becomes an opportunity to build resilience and humility. The obstacle doesn't prevent our progress, it dictates the specific form our progress must take. Marcus Aurelius, who faced relentless political turmoil, military threats, and personal loss, constantly reinforced this mindset in his private writings. He penned a powerful reminder to himself: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is the philosophical heart of the concept. He isn't suggesting we ignore the obstacle or pretend it isn't hard. He is instructing us to use it, to lean into it, to allow its very resistance to become the friction that sharpens our resolve. A stream doesn't complain about the rock in its path. It flows around it, and in doing so, creates a new and often more beautiful course. The rock didn't stop the stream, it directed it. Aurelius is urging us to adopt the same fluid, adaptable strength, to see every hindrance not as a negation of our plans, but as an invitation to a different and perhaps better execution of them. We can see this principle brought to life in the story of countless entrepreneurs and innovators, but perhaps none more famously than Thomas Edison. His quest to create a practical, long-lasting electric light bulb was not a straight line to success. It was a brutal, years-long parade of failures. He famously tried thousands of different materials for the filament, each one burning out and failing. A mindset that views obstacles as pure misfortune would have seen this as 10,000 reasons to quit. But Edison reportedly reframed it, saying, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. This is the essence of failing forward." Each blown filament wasn't a stop sign, it was a data point. Each obstacle advanced the action by eliminating a dead end and narrowing the path to the eventual solution. The obstacle, the constant failure, was the way. It forced relentless creativity, patience, and resilience, virtues that not only led to the light bulb, but undoubtedly defined his character far more than any easy success ever could. Now, bring this transformative lens to your own life. I want you to identify one current obstacle that feels particularly heavy or frustrating. It might be a strained relationship, a health concern, a project at work that seems stalled, or even a recurring daily hassle like a long commute. Instead of focusing on how it's blocking you, I want you to brainstorm how it could potentially serve you. Ask yourself, what specific virtue is this difficulty inviting me to practice? Is this financial pressure teaching me resourcefulness and discernment between wants and needs? Is this difficult person offering me a daily drill in patience and setting boundaries with grace? Is this professional rejection forcing me to reevaluate my skills and perhaps pivot toward a path that is more authentically mine? The obstacle itself may not change, but your relationship to it will undergo a revolution. It transforms from a foe to a demanding but invaluable teacher, and in that shift you reclaim all the power. What does it truly mean to live naturally when our modern world is so thoroughly constructed of schedules, screens, and synthetic experiences? We inhabit climate-controlled environments, nourish ourselves with processed foods, and measure our worth through digital metrics of likes and followers. This isn't a call to abandon technology and live in the woods, but an invitation to ask a deeper question. Are we living in a way that is authentic to our fundamental human design? The Stoics offered a powerful answer to this, and their conception of nature went far beyond the physical world. For them, to live in accordance with nature was to live in agreement with the rational, virtuous order of the universe itself. They observed that every aspect of the cosmos operates according to its own defining purpose. A seed grows into a tree, a bee pollinates a flower. For a human being, our defining characteristic, our highest faculty, is our capacity for reason. Therefore, to live according to our nature is to use that reason wisely, to discern what is truly good, to act with justice, to exercise courage, and to practice self-control. It is about stripping away the layers of social conditioning and artificial desire to reveal the core of who we are meant to be. Rational, social beings designed for cooperation and virtue. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, established this principle as the very cornerstone of the philosophy. He taught that the ultimate goal of life, its highest good, is to live in agreement with nature. His successor, Cleans, further refined this, emphasizing that this agreement meant living in harmony with both our own human nature and the nature of the whole universe. This was not a passive acceptance but an active alignment. It meant using our gift of reason to understand the world as it actually is, not as we might wish it to be, and to choose actions that are in harmony with that reality. A simple but profound example is the acceptance of death. To fear and rage against our own mortality is to fight against a fundamental law of nature. To accept it as a natural and necessary part of the life cycle, however, is to live in agreement with nature, which frees up immense energy to focus on living well in the time we have. This philosophical North Star guides us away from vain pursuits and toward a life of purpose and peace. We can translate this ancient wisdom into strikingly modern applications. Simplifying our lives is a direct act of aligning with nature. The natural world operates on principles of efficiency and sustainability, not endless accumulation. Our modern culture of consumerism, constantly inventing new desires for things we never knew we needed, is a powerful force pulling us away from our nature. It fuels anxiety, clutter, and a perpetual sense of lack. Choosing to reduce consumption, to declutter our physical and digital spaces, and to find contentment in simplicity is a modern form of Stoic practice. It's a conscious decision to prioritize what is essential and true, meaningful relationships, personal growth, time for reflection over the artificial and ephemeral. Similarly, acting with integrity despite social pressure is a profound expression of living according to your rational nature. It's the moment you choose to speak a difficult truth in a meeting when silence would be easier, or when you refuse to participate in gossip even when it makes you the outsider. In those moments, you are prioritizing the internal compass of your own virtue over the external winds of popular opinion. You are choosing the lasting satisfaction of self-respect over the fleeting approval of the crowd. Now turn this lens on your own life. I want you to identify just one area, perhaps a small corner of your daily existence, where you feel a subtle tension, a sense that how you are living is not quite aligned with who you truly are or wish to be. Maybe it's the constant hustle to keep up with trends that don't actually interest you, creating a quiet sense of inauthenticity. Perhaps it's the way you spend your leisure time, mindlessly scrolling instead of engaging in an activity that genuinely nourishes your mind or body. It could be a relationship where you compromise your values to keep the peace, or a commitment you made out of obligation that drains your energy rather than fulfills you. Don't judge it, simply observe it. What one change could you make in that area to bring it into closer alignment with your core values? It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It might be as simple as setting a 30-minute timer for social media, or choosing to walk in a park instead of a mall this weekend, or having one honest conversation you've been avoiding. This is the practice of living in agreement with nature, not by moving to a cabin in the wilderness, but by consciously cultivating the natural garden of your own character, pulling out the weeds of artificial desire and nurturing the native plants of your rational, virtuous self. Consider for a moment the most powerful motivator we rarely discuss openly, the simple, undeniable fact that our time here is limited. To contemplate this isn't morbid or pessimistic. It is the ultimate wake-up call to stop postponing your life. This is the heart of the Stoic practice known as memento mori, a Latin phrase that translates to remember you must die. Far from being a dark obsession, the Stoics used this awareness as a sharpening stone for their priorities, a tool to cut through the noise of trivial concerns and focus with laser-like intensity on what is essential and meaningful. They believed that keeping the reality of our mortality squarely in view is the key to living with profound urgency, gratitude, and purpose. because it reminds us that the opportunity to act virtuously, to love deeply, and to make a difference is not infinite. It is a gift available only in the present moment. Seneca, with his characteristic brilliance, captured the transformative power of this practice in his letters. He wrote, "He who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave." This is one of the most liberating statements in all of philosophy. Seneca is arguing that the fear of death is the master that keeps us in chains, forcing us to live timidly, to cling to security, and to waste our days on things that don't truly matter. But when you fully accept and make peace with your own mortality, you break those chains. You are no longer a slave to the opinions of others, because their judgment pales in comparison to the vastness of eternity. You are no longer a slave to the pursuit of wealth for its own sake, because you cannot take it with you. You become free to pursue only that which aligns with your deepest values, because you understand that your most precious resource, time, is irreplaceable and constantly dwindling. Remembering you must die is what teaches you, finally, how to live. Integrating memento mori into your daily routine doesn't require dwelling on grim imagery. It's about choosing a simple, personal reminder that gently nudges your perspective back to what's real. Throughout history, many cultures used physical objects for this very purpose. The ancient Romans were known to keep skulls on their desks or wear rings engraved with memento mori symbols. In the modern world, your reminder can be far more subtle and personal. It could be a specific piece of art on your wall that signifies impermanence to you. It might be a quote written on a note card placed by your computer monitor. For some, it's a watch they wear not as a status symbol, but as a literal reminder of time passing. For others, it could be a simple ritual, like pausing for a moment each time they hear a siren or see an ambulance, to send out a thought for those involved and to acknowledge the fragility of life. The object itself is unimportant. Its power lies solely in its ability to function as a psychological trigger, snapping you out of autopilot and asking you the most important question you can ever ask yourself. Am I spending this moment, this hour, this day on what truly matters? So I want to leave you with a challenge, a question to carry with you beyond this video. It's a question that can instantly vaporize procrastination, erase petty grudges, and clarify your deepest intentions if you allow it to. Ask yourself with genuine seriousness, if I knew with absolute certainty that today was my last day, what would I do differently? Not in a dramatic, movie-like sense, but in the quiet, real choices that make up a life. Would you finally have that difficult but necessary conversation you've been avoiding? Would you put your work down and spend an extra hour truly listening to your child or your partner? Would you step outside and feel the sun on your face with a little more gratitude? Would you let go of that minor irritation that happened yesterday and choose connection instead? Your honest answer to that question isn't about your final day. It's a direct instruction manual for how you should be living your life right now. The gap between your answer and your current reality is the very space where your most authentic, purposeful, and unstoppable life is waiting to begin. Yet in our modern world, we often find ourselves doing the exact opposite, surrounding ourselves with a near constant stream of noise and input. From the moment we wake and check our phones to the background television and endless podcasts filling our commutes, we rarely allow our minds a moment of true, uninterrupted quiet. This constant stimulation acts like a static that drowns out the subtle frequency of our own inner wisdom, making it nearly impossible to hear our own thoughts, let alone examine them. The Stoics, living in a far less crowded information environment, still recognize the profound necessity of stepping away from the crowd, both physically and mentally. They understood that to know oneself, to truly access that inner citadel, one must regularly seek out silence and solitude, not as a punishment, but as a vital practice for mental clarity and moral courage. Marcus Aurelius, despite bearing the immense weight of leading an empire, was fervent in his advocacy for this internal retreat. He wrote to himself, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." So constantly give yourself this retreat and renew yourself. For him, this wasn't about finding a physical cave to hide in. It was about the ability to create a sanctuary of silence within his own mind, no matter the chaos unfolding around him. He believed that by regularly retreating into the quiet chambers of his own consciousness, he could access a wellspring of strength and perspective that external circumstances could never provide. This practice of solitude was how he reconnected with his core principles, ensuring that his actions as emperor were guided by his virtue and not by the tumultuous opinions of the Senate or the people. Integrating this into our own lives requires intentionality in a world designed to distract. A powerful place to start is by carving out a daily quiet moment. This doesn't need to be an hour of meditation. It can begin with just 5 or 10 minutes spent in complete silence after you wake up or before you go to sleep. Sit with your own thoughts without a phone, a book, or any other input. Simply observe what arises in your mind without judgment. Another profoundly effective method is a periodic digital detox. Choose one evening a week or even a full day each month where you disconnect from all screens and notifications. The initial anxiety of disconnection is precisely the feeling to sit with. It reveals your dependency on external validation and distraction. Finally, seek solitude in nature. A walk in a park or woods without headphones allows the natural world to provide a gentle, non-invasive backdrop for your own introspection. The rhythm of your footsteps and the sounds of the environment can become a meditation, helping to quiet the internal chatter and surface deeper insights that are usually shouted down by the noise of daily life. I encourage you to make this practice immediately tangible. Before this day is over, consciously schedule just 10 minutes of absolute silence for yourself. Find a comfortable place, set a timer if you need to, and commit to doing nothing but being present with your own mind. Don't force any specific thoughts, simply listen. Notice what arises. Do you feel restless and anxious, desperate to reach for your phone? Does a long-forgotten concern or a creative idea suddenly bubble to the surface? This simple experiment is not about achieving a state of blissful calm. It's about reconvening a meeting with your deepest self, a meeting that is too often postponed indefinitely. In that quiet space, you may just rediscover the clarity and purpose that constant noise has been obscuring all along. Consider how many times a day your mood is hijacked not by an actual event, but by a thought that you accepted without a moment's hesitation. A fleeting impression flashes through your mind. My boss didn't say hello this morning. He must be angry with me. Or that comment was a personal attack. Or this traffic is going to ruin my entire day. And in an instant, you've not only accepted that initial impression as absolute truth, but you've also built an entire emotional narrative around it. This automatic, uncritical acceptance of our mental impressions is the source of a tremendous amount of needless anxiety, anger, and sadness. The Stoics identified this as a critical point of vulnerability in the human psyche, and they developed a powerful countermeasure known as the Discipline of Assent. This practice is the mental equivalent of installing a security checkpoint at the gates of your mind, where every incoming thought, every impression, is carefully examined before it is granted entry and allowed to influence your beliefs and emotions. At the core of this discipline is a profound insight from the Stoic teacher Epictetus, who spent his early life in slavery and understood better than most that our inner freedom is the only true freedom we possess. He famously taught, people are not disturbed by things but by the views they take of them. This single sentence dismantles the entire mechanism of our emotional suffering. The event itself, the silent boss, the critical comment, the traffic jam, is neutral. It is simply a thing that happened. The disturbance, the emotional storm, is generated entirely by the view we take, the judgment we attach to that event. The discipline of assent is the practice of inserting a moment of conscious awareness between the event and that judgment. It is the skill of pausing to ask a simple but revolutionary question. Is this impression true? Is it accurate? Is it helpful? Is it aligned with reality and with virtue? Or is it a distorted story my mind is creating based on fear, insecurity, or habit? Let's make this concrete with a scenario almost everyone can relate to. Imagine you send a detailed email to a colleague proposing a new idea for a project. Hours pass and you receive no reply. The initial automatic impression arrives instantly. They're ignoring me. They must think my idea is stupid. They don't respect my work. If you grant assent to this impression without examination, your entire afternoon can be consumed by feelings of insecurity, resentment, and self-doubt. Now apply the discipline of assent. The moment you feel that familiar pang of anxiety, you pause. You acknowledge the initial impression, but you refuse to accept it as fact. You then subject it to a rational inquiry. What are other, more likely explanations? Perhaps your colleague is incredibly busy in meetings and hasn't had a moment to check their email thoroughly. Maybe they received it and are taking time to think it over carefully before responding. It's possible the email got caught in a spam filter. By generating alternative narratives, you loosen the grip of the initial catastrophic assumption. You realize that your emotional reaction was based not on reality, but on an untested hypothesis that you mistakenly treated as a proven fact. This doesn't guarantee a positive outcome, but it absolutely guarantees that you will not suffer needlessly while you wait for more information. This week, I encourage you to become a gentle scientist of your own mind. Choose one specific moment from today where you felt a sudden spike of stress, irritation, or sadness. It might have been a sideways glance you interpreted as dismissive, a plan that was cancelled, or a news headline that made you feel hopeless. Now, gently revisit that moment and identify the specific assumption you made, the unquestioned thought you accepted that led to that feeling. Was it the assumption that you knew what someone else was thinking? Was it the belief that a change in plans was a personal rejection? Was it the idea that a single news story defines the entire state of the world? Simply bringing that hidden assumption into the light of your conscious awareness is the first and most powerful step. You don't need to forcefully argue it away. Just by questioning it, by holding it up for examination, you have already begun to weaken its power over you. You have taken back the authority to decide what is true, and in doing so, you have built another layer of defense for your inner citadel. When was the last time you truly paused to count your blessings, not as a fleeting thought, but as a deliberate act of acknowledging the good that already exists in your life? In a world that constantly pushes us to want more, to achieve more, and to compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel, we develop a powerful negativity bias. Our minds are wired to notice what's missing, what's wrong, and what could be better. This isn't a personal failing, it's an evolutionary relic designed to keep us alert to danger. But the Stoics recognized this tendency thousands of years ago and developed a powerful antidote, the daily, active practice of gratitude. They understood that contentment isn't a passive state that arrives once we acquire everything we want. It is an active skill we cultivate by fully appreciating what we already have. This isn't about slapping a positive veneer over real problems or denying difficulty. It is about making a conscious and rational choice to direct your attention toward the sources of sustenance and joy that are already present, thereby reducing the constant, draining desire for more and building a foundation of unshakable contentment that external circumstances cannot easily erode. Seneca, in his profound letters to his friend Lucilius, cut straight to the heart of this matter with a timeless piece of wisdom. He wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing." The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach, but his most direct instruction on gratitude was even simpler. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. This is the Stoic secret to wealth, not in increasing your possessions, but in decreasing your desires. And the most effective way to decrease desire is to systematically and regularly appreciate what is already yours. Seneca argued that we are like dogs chained to a cart. We can either strain against the chain and be dragged miserably, or we can trot along willingly, finding pleasure in the journey itself. Gratitude is the practice of choosing to trot willingly, of looking around at the scenery of your current life and noticing its beauty, rather than endlessly focusing on a distant horizon you may never reach. Turning this philosophy into a daily ritual is beautifully simple, and its effects can be transformative. One of the most powerful and researched methods is keeping a gratitude journal. This doesn't need to be a lengthy, literary endeavor. Each evening, perhaps right before your Stoic evening review, take 2 minutes to write down 3 specific things you are grateful for that day. The key is in the specificity. Don't just write "my family," write "the way my daughter laughed uncontrollably at breakfast this morning." Don't write "my job." Write the feeling of accomplishment after finally solving that stubborn problem at work. This act of specific recollection forces your brain to scan the last 24 hours for positive moments, effectively training it to become better at noticing the good that is always there but often overlooked. If journaling isn't your style, the practice can be entirely mental. During your commute home or while you're preparing dinner, make it a habit to mentally acknowledge 3 good things. It could be as simple as the warmth of the sun on your skin, the refreshing taste of cold water, or the reliable comfort of your favorite chair. This isn't naive, it's neurologically savvy. You are quite literally rewiring your brain's default pattern from lack to abundance. Now, I want you to take this concept from the abstract to the intensely personal. Grab a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. I want you to write down 1 thing you are genuinely grateful for that you almost always take for granted. We're not talking about the obvious things like health or family right now. Dig deeper. What is the silent background blessing that operates so seamlessly in your life that you've stopped seeing it? Is it the incredible miracle of instant hot water that flows from your shower each morning? Is it the complex global network that allows a banana grown in another hemisphere to appear on your kitchen counter? Is it the functioning of your own lungs, drawing in air without any conscious effort from you, sustaining your life breath by breath? By identifying and writing down just one of these foundational gifts, you pull it from the background of your awareness into the foreground. You momentarily sever the taking for granted mechanism and replace it with a spark of genuine, awe-filled appreciation. This small act is a quiet revolution against entitlement and a powerful step toward building a contentment so deep that it can withstand any collapse. Think about the last argument you had, whether it was a heated debate with a partner or a simple, frustrating misunderstanding with a coworker. So often, these conflicts aren't really about the issue being discussed. They're a direct result of our inability or our unwillingness to step outside of our own narrow viewpoint and truly see the situation from the other side. We become trapped in our own narrative, convinced of our own rightness, and in doing so, we create an impenetrable wall between ourselves and the other person. The Stoics identified this self-imposed prison of perspective as a major source of human conflict and suffering, and they developed a powerful mental exercise to break free from it. They called it, quite simply, perspective-taking, and they practiced it not to win arguments, but to dissolve them before they could even begin, cultivating a profound sense of empathy and fairness that made their interactions with others a source of peace rather than turmoil. This practice is deeply rooted in the Stoic understanding of human nature and our shared rationality. The Stoics believed that while we all have a unique vantage point shaped by our experiences, we are all participants in the same shared reality, using the same faculty of reason. Therefore, to understand another person's action, especially one that seems irrational or hostile, we must make a conscious effort to reconstruct their internal logic. We must ask ourselves not, how could they do that to me, but rather, from their perspective, given their knowledge, their history, and their desires, why did this action make perfect sense to them? This shift doesn't mean we have to agree with them or excuse poor behavior. It simply means we are seeking a more complete and accurate understanding of the event, which is the first and most crucial step toward resolving any conflict without resorting to bitterness or judgment. Marcus Aurelius, who had to navigate the treacherous waters of Roman politics and the complexities of leading a vast empire, constantly reminded himself of this necessity. In his private meditations, he wrote, "When you are offended by someone's wrongdoing, immediately turn to your own similar failings. This is a breathtakingly humble and effective technique." He isn't saying this to foster guilt, but to foster connection. By recalling a time when you, too, acted out of fear, ignorance, or misplaced desire, you instantly shatter the illusion of your own moral superiority. You recognize the shared human fallibility that connects you to the other person. He continues, "For when you consider your own weakness, you will forget your anger and be more inclined to understand theirs." This understanding is the soil in which patience grows. It allows you to replace a reaction of rage with a response of calm inquiry, transforming a potential battlefield into a space for mutual understanding. Let's make this practical with a common scenario. Imagine your roommate has been leaving dirty dishes in the sink for days, despite your repeated requests to clean up. Your initial internal narrative is likely one of personal offense. They are so disrespectful, they don't care about me or our shared space. They are lazy and inconsiderate. This story fuels your frustration every time you walk into the kitchen. Now, apply the Stoic practice of perspective-taking. Instead of stewing in your anger, you pause and deliberately construct a narrative from their point of view. Perhaps they have been overwhelmed with a major project deadline at work, and their usual conscientiousness has been completely depleted by stress. Maybe they were raised in a home with a different standard of cleanliness and genuinely don't perceive the mess in the same way you do. It's even possible they are struggling with a hidden personal issue, like anxiety or depression, that saps their energy for basic tasks. The moment you genuinely entertain these alternative explanations, something remarkable happens. The personal sting dissolves. The action is no longer a deliberate arrow shot at you. It becomes a symptom of their own human experience. This doesn't mean you don't address the issue, but it completely changes how you address it. Instead of launching an accusation, "You never do the dishes," you might lead with curiosity and empathy. "Hey, I've noticed the sink has been piling up. Is everything okay? You seem like you might be swamped with something." This approach comes from a place of seeking understanding, not assigning blame. and it dramatically increases the chances of a cooperative solution rather than a defensive argument. I want you to bring this powerful tool into your own life right now. Cast your mind back to a recent, minor conflict. It could be a brief tension with a store clerk, a text message that felt curt from a friend, or a moment of friction with a family member. Replay the incident in your mind, but this time make a conscious effort to step out of your own story. Try to see the entire event through their eyes. What might have been happening in their world just before that interaction? What pressures, fears, or preoccupations could they have been carrying that you knew nothing about? What good intention might have been behind their action, even if it was poorly executed? You don't need to have the right answers. The immense value is in the act of asking the questions. This simple exercise in cognitive empathy doesn't just reduce conflict with others. It is a profound act of liberation for yourself, freeing you from the exhausting burden of constantly assuming the worst and allowing you to engage with the world with a lighter, more compassionate, and far more resilient heart. The Stoics held a profound and beautiful conviction that we are not isolated beings designed for solitary existence, but are fundamentally made for community, bound together in a web of mutual obligation and shared humanity. This isn't a sentimental notion, it's a core tenet of their physics and ethics. They observed the universe as a single, interconnected, rational organism, and they saw human beings as the unique, social expressions of that organism, designed to work together for the common good just as limbs serve the whole body. To act against this natural design by being cruel, selfish, or unjust is therefore not just a moral failing, but a violation of our own nature, a form of self-inflicted disharmony that fractures our connection to the cosmos and to each other. For the Stoic, virtue is incomplete if it is only practiced in private. It must be expressed outwardly through our interactions, through a steadfast commitment to treating every person we encounter with a baseline of respect, fairness, and compassion, especially when it is difficult, and especially when they may not deserve it by conventional standards. This commitment to kindness and justice is perhaps most powerfully articulated by Marcus Aurelius, who had more power to enact vengeance or withhold grace than almost anyone on earth. In the privacy of his journal, he constantly reminded himself, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." This simple analogy captures the essence of Stoic social virtue. Your well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of the whole. To harm the community is, in the long run, to harm yourself. He also provided the ultimate motivation for these acts, writing, "You can commit injustice by doing nothing." This is a radical idea. Injustice isn't just an active act of malice. It is also the passive sin of omission, the kindness not given, the unfairness not challenged, the help not offered when it was within your power to do so. And his most guiding principle on the matter was to act rightly for its own sake, advising himself, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." The reward for a kind or just act is not praise, gratitude, or reciprocation. The reward is the act itself, the knowledge that you have lived in accordance with your nature and reinforced the fabric of your shared humanity. We often imagine grand gestures when we think of justice or profound sacrifices when we think of kindness, but the Stoic practice is often found in the smallest, most mundane interactions of daily life. It's the patience you extend to a flustered cashier during a long line, consciously choosing to see a fellow human having a hard day rather than an obstacle to your schedule. It's the decision to listen fully to a colleague's idea without interrupting, even if you disagree, granting them the dignity of your complete attention. It's the act of stopping to help someone pick up papers they've dropped in the wind, or letting another driver merge into your lane with a wave rather than aggressively closing the gap. On a slightly larger scale, practicing Stoic justice might mean speaking up in a meeting when a quieter coworker's contribution is overlooked and giving them credit, or gently challenging a friend's prejudiced comment not to shame them, but because silence would be complicity. It is these small, consistent, everyday actions, chosen not for external approval but because they are right, that build a resilient character and cumulatively create a more virtuous world. As you move through the remainder of your day, I invite you to carry this question as a gentle prompt for action. Look for one specific, unplanned opportunity to practice a small, extra measure of kindness or fairness. It doesn't need to be monumental. Perhaps you notice a neighbor struggling with heavy groceries and you offer to help carry a bag. Maybe you choose to give someone the benefit of the doubt in a situation where your first instinct was to judge. It could be as simple as sending a message of genuine appreciation to someone who wouldn't expect it. Identify that moment, and in that space, make a conscious choice to strengthen the swarm, to be a good citizen of the world, and to take the action simply because it is the right thing to do. How much of our daily frustration and disappointment can be traced back to a single, simple source? The quiet, often unconscious act of expecting the world to conform to our personal preferences. We set a mental blueprint for how a day should unfold, how a person should behave, or how a project should conclude, and when reality inevitably delivers a different design, we experience the collapse of that expectation as a personal failure or an injustice. This chasm between our hopes and the actual outcomes is a primary engine of human suffering, and the Stoics, with their unflinching focus on what is truly within our power, developed a powerful psychological tool to bridge it: the realistic management of expectations. They proposed a fundamental shift in where we place our emotional investment, moving it away from the unpredictable and external results and anchoring it firmly in the one domain we can always govern: our own efforts, our intentions, and our actions. Epictetus, whose teachings were entirely concerned with achieving inner freedom, offered perhaps the clearest and most practical guidance on this matter. He instructed his students, "Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well." At first glance, this sounds like a call for passive resignation, but that is a profound misreading. Epictetus is not telling us to abandon all desire for improvement or to stop working toward goals. He is offering a master strategy for invulnerability. The person who expects a specific outcome, a promotion, a yes to a proposal, a victory in a competition, has voluntarily handed over their emotional well-being to the whims of fortune. If the desired outcome occurs, they are happy. If it does not, they are devastated. Their peace is on a roller coaster they do not control. Epictetus's solution is to decouple your sense of success from the outcome entirely. Wish for things to happen as they do, meaning accept the reality that unfolds without resistance, and focus your entire sense of accomplishment on the quality of your own performance within that reality. Your goal is not to win the race. Your goal is to run with perfect form and maximum effort. The final placing becomes mere data, not a verdict on your worth. This philosophy finds powerful application in some of the most emotionally charged areas of our lives. Consider the exhausting process of searching for a new job. You can spend hours tailoring your resume, writing a compelling cover letter, and preparing meticulously for an interview. The natural, untrained expectation is that this immense effort should result in a job offer. This sets you up for a potential double defeat. Not only do you not get the job, but you also feel that your hard work was wasted. The Stoic approach reframes the entire endeavor. Your goal is not to get the job. That decision rests with hiring managers, internal candidates, and company budgets, all far outside your control. Your goal, your only true goal, is to prepare and perform to the absolute best of your ability. You can control the research you do, the clarity of your communication, and the professionalism of your follow-up. When you define success this way, you can walk out of any interview feeling accomplished, regardless of the outcome. You have already achieved your objective by executing your part with excellence. The offer becomes a potential bonus, not the sole measure of your effort's value. The same principle applies to personal relationships. You cannot control how another person feels or acts. You can only control how you show up with honesty, kindness, and integrity. Expecting a specific reaction or reciprocation is a recipe for heartache. Instead, find satisfaction in the act of being a good friend or partner itself, and allow the other person's response to simply be what it is. Take a moment now to turn this lens inward on your own life. Identify one specific area where you currently hold an expectation that is quietly setting you up for frustration because its fulfillment depends heavily on factors outside your command. Perhaps it's the expectation that your children will always behave perfectly in public, that your commute will always be free of traffic, or that a creative project you're passionate about will be met with universal acclaim. Now consciously dissect that expectation. Separate the part that is within your control, your own preparation, your patience, your dedication to your craft from the part that is not, the behavior of others, the flow of traffic, the opinions of an audience. Make a conscious decision to release your attachment to the external outcome and reinvest your entire sense of purpose and satisfaction into the internal effort. This isn't lowering your standards, it is raising your understanding of where true, unassailable achievement really lies. By doing so, you don't just avoid disappointment, you unlock a more resilient and consistent source of motivation, one that is powered by your own virtue rather than the fickle approval of the world. It's a common misconception that Stoicism advocates for a life of grim austerity, where the body is neglected or even punished as a distraction from the mind. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoics were not ascetics who shunned the physical world. They were pragmatists who understood that a sound mind is far more difficult to cultivate within a neglected or ailing body. They saw physical health not as an end in itself, a goal for vanity or mere longevity, but as a vital instrument for virtuous action. A body weakened by indulgence, lethargy, or neglect becomes a burden, constantly demanding attention and sapping the energy required for focus, discipline, and moral courage. Conversely, a body strengthened and cared for becomes a reliable ally, providing the stamina and stability needed to face life's challenges with clarity and resolve. This is the profound mind-body connection the Stoics honored. Physical resilience is the foundation upon which mental fortitude is built, not its opposite. The Roman Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus spoke directly to this principle with unambiguous clarity. He argued that training the body was every bit as important as training the mind, precisely because the two are inseparable. He stated, "How indeed could a body which is weak and soft possess a strong spirit? For the body is, so to speak, the vessel which contains the spirit, and if the vessel is weak and broken, the spirit cannot possibly be strong and firm." This powerful metaphor reframes physical discipline not as a form of vanity, but as a fundamental duty of self-respect. You would not pour precious wine into a cracked and leaking cup. Likewise, you cannot expect a strong and virtuous character to reside in a body that is chronically fatigued, inflamed by poor nutrition, or weakened by inactivity. For Musonius, exercise wasn't about building a perfect physique. It was about forging a vessel sturdy enough to carry a noble spirit through the rough seas of life without cracking under the pressure. Integrating this ancient wisdom into a modern routine doesn't require a radical overhaul or a punishing gym regimen. It's about consistent, mindful practices that reinforce the connection between physical well-being and mental clarity. Start with something as simple as a daily walk, not as a chore, but as a moving meditation. Use that time away from screens to connect with your breath, observe your surroundings, and let your mind unwind and process the day. This simple act of rhythmic movement is a powerful tool for reducing anxiety and sparking creativity. Consider your relationship with food through a Stoic lens. Mindful eating isn't about restrictive dieting. It's about viewing food as fuel for virtuous action. Ask yourself before a meal, will this food nourish my body and provide sustained energy, or will it lead to lethargy and brain fog? This isn't a call for perfection, but for conscious choice, and perhaps most overlooked in our hyper-connected world is the disciplined practice of adequate rest. The Stoics valued purposeful action, and purpose requires energy. Prioritizing 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep is not a sign of laziness. It is a strategic investment in your cognitive function, emotional regulation, and willpower for the following day. It is the essential maintenance that keeps your vessel strong. This week, I encourage you to consciously select one single physical practice to experiment with, not as a New Year's resolution, but as a practical exploration of Stoic principle. Your choice should be a deliberate act of strengthening your vessel. Perhaps it's committing to a 15-minute bodyweight routine every morning to build physical endurance and the self-control that comes with following through on a commitment. Maybe it's the practice of mindful eating, where for one meal a day you eat without distraction, savoring your food and stopping when you are comfortably full, exercising mastery over impulse. It could be as simple as setting a firm bedtime and honoring it, protecting your sleep as the non-negotiable foundation of your next day's resilience. Choose the one that feels most relevant to your current struggles, and for 7 days, observe not just the physical effects, but the quiet impact it has on your patience, your focus, and your overall sense of self-command. Notice how a simple traffic jam, a slow-moving line at the grocery store, or an unexpected delay in a project timeline can instantly transform a perfectly pleasant mood into a simmering pot of frustration. That tightness in your chest, the sigh of exasperation, the compulsive glance at your watch, these are the physical symptoms of impatience, a state that takes a neutral event and layers it with a thick coating of personal suffering. We often think of patience as a passive state, a matter of gritting our teeth and just waiting for an unpleasantness to pass, but the Stoics framed it in a far more active and empowering light. For them, patience was not passive resignation. It was a vigorous exercise in accepting the fundamental nature of reality without complaint. It is the conscious decision to align your expectations with the way things are, rather than wasting energy railing against the way you think they should be. This is about recognizing that delays and difficulties are not anomalies in the smooth fabric of life. They are part of the very texture of existence itself. To practice patience is to stop fighting that texture and to learn how to move through it with grace. Seneca, who frequently wrote about the finite and precious nature of time, offered profound insight into the disciplined mind required to wait well. He observed, "There is nothing so certain than that the evils of life come from our impatience." He wasn't just talking about major catastrophes. He was pointing to the 1,000 tiny cuts of daily annoyance that we inflict upon ourselves through our refusal to accept the inevitable slowness and friction of the world. He argued that a disciplined mind understands that some things simply take the time they take, A line moves at the pace of the cashier and the customers ahead of you. Traffic flows according to the accidents and volume of the day. These events operate on their own schedule, entirely indifferent to your personal urgency. Seneca would advise that to become impatient is to declare a war you cannot win against reality itself. The person who waits well, however, reclaims that time as their own. Instead of fuming in a queue, they might observe the people around them, plan their day, or simply stand in a moment of quiet reflection. They transform lost time into found time, not through force, but through a profound shift in perception. We can actively train this muscle of calm endurance by reframing common, everyday irritations as designated practice sessions. The next time you find yourself in a traffic jam, rather than gripping the steering wheel and cursing your luck, see it as a perfect, no-cost opportunity to practice Stoic patience. You are literally going nowhere. The only thing you can change is your internal experience of that fact. Take a deep breath and acknowledge the situation is entirely outside your control. Then choose to use the time. Listen to an audiobook or a piece of music you love. Use the silence to mentally work through a problem you've been pondering. Simply observe the sky or the trees without any agenda. The same applies to a long wait at a doctor's office or a delayed flight. These are not punishments. They are unexpected gifts of time in a life that is often overscheduled. By engaging with the delay rather than resisting it, you dismantle its power to irritate you. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are a practitioner using circumstances for your own growth. The next time you feel that familiar heat of impatience begin to rise, whether you're waiting for a web page to load, for a reply to a text, or for a colleague to finish a long story, I want you to pause and ask yourself one simple but revealing question. What is the specific desire that is being thwarted right now? Impatience is always a symptom of a deeper, unmet want. Your frustration in traffic is a symptom of your desire to be at your destination already. Your irritation with a slow-moving person is a symptom of your desire for efficiency and speed. Your annoyance at a project delay is a symptom of your desire for control and predictability. By identifying the underlying desire, you accomplish two things. First, you bring it into the light of your conscious awareness, which immediately diminishes its emotional charge. Second, you can then apply the core Stoic question: is this desire within my control? The desire to be somewhere else is not within your control when your car is boxed in on the freeway. The desire for someone else to move faster is not within your control. Recognizing this allows you to consciously release the struggle against the unchangeable. You can then redirect your energy toward what is within your control: your breath, your posture, your thoughts, and your decision to use the present moment, however imperfect, without allowing it to steal your peace. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, having journeyed through the daily rituals that forged some of history's most resilient minds. We began each day with the Stoic morning meditation, a practice of premeditation that inoculates the spirit against future adversity. We closed each evening with a rigorous review, transforming daily experience into lasting wisdom through honest self-assessment. We learned the art of cognitive detachment, understanding that events themselves are neutral and that our power lies solely in the judgments we assign to them. We explored the discipline of desire, redirecting our wants from fickle externals to the steadfast internal goods of virtue and character. We voluntarily embraced discomfort to prove our own fortitude to ourselves, and we cultivated the crucial pause between stimulus and response, choosing mindful action over reactive emotion. We consulted our inner sage for guidance, accepted the inevitable flow of change, and anchored ourselves firmly in the only time we ever truly possess the present moment. We practiced negative visualization to ignite profound gratitude, built an inner citadel of unshakable values, and maintained our equilibrium through both triumph and failure. We used journaling for clarity, reframed obstacles as opportunities, and sought to live in accordance with our rational nature. We remembered our mortality to prioritize what matters, sought silence to hear our own wisdom, and carefully disciplined our assent to avoid being misled by false impressions. We actively cultivated gratitude, practiced perspective-taking to dissolve conflict, and committed to acts of kindness and justice as expressions of our shared humanity. We managed our expectations realistically, built physical resilience to support mental fortitude, and cultivated patience as an active acceptance of life's inherent rhythm. These are not tools for numbing yourself to the richness of human experience, for building a wall against emotion, or for retreating from the world. They are precisely the opposite. This is a system for engaging with life more fully, more courageously, and more clearly than you ever thought possible. It is about feeling the full force of disappointment, anger, or fear, and yet possessing the trained capacity to not be ruled by it. It is about mastering your response so that you can meet life's inevitable collapses not with panic, but with principle. The freedom that comes from this self-discipline is perhaps best captured by Epictetus, who reminds us, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." This is the ultimate promise of these practices, not a life free from difficulty, but a self that is free within difficulty. This path is not about overnight transformation or grand, sweeping gestures. The most resilient structures are built brick by brick, day by day. I encourage you to start small, look back over these rituals and identify just one that resonated most deeply with you. Perhaps it's the 5-minute morning meditation, or the simple evening journaling prompt, or the practice of questioning your initial impressions. Commit to that single practice for just 1 week. Observe without judgment the subtle shifts in your reactions, your patience, your sense of inner stability. Notice how a small daily ritual can gradually forge a mind capable of withstanding tremendous pressure. This is how you build your inner citadel. I would love to hear about your journey in the comments below. Which one of these Stoic practices resonated most with you? Was it the concept of premeditating challenges, or the idea of reframing obstacles as the way forward? Sharing your reflection not only solidifies your own understanding but creates a community of practice, a modern Stoa where we can all learn from each other's experiences. Thank you for investing this time in building your resilience. Remember, the world will always present its collapses, but your mind, once fortified, need never